On today's Locked On Kings podcast, longtime Sacramento radio broadcaster and former host here of the Locked On Kings podcast, Jason Ross joins me to talk about working with Mr. 3000, the G-Man, Gary Gerould, and imagining what the Golden One Center is going to be like when, not if, when the Kings return to the playoffs. You're listening to Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time. Time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season long. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports reporter and producer for ABC 10 News. I worked for a long time at Sacktown Sports 1140 Radio, working daily with Jason Ross, who has been a friend, a colleague, a mentor of mine in so many ways in the Sacramento sports journalism and sports and media industry. Jason is always willing to come back here on Locked On Kings, where people don't know this. He initially started the Locked On Kings podcast when David Locke of the Utah Jazz reached out to him a long time ago. It was almost 6 years now that I've been hosting the podcast. Almost 6 years ago, I took over for Jason Ross hosting the pod, as he does a million other things, including not just broadcasting Sacramento Kings games and hosting his radio show. He also is the play-by-play broadcaster for the Big Sky champion Sac State Hornets football team. J. Ross does so much, and yet he still finds time to join me here on Locked On Kings. He's always fun to talk to. We're going to touch on a lot of stuff, of course, this playoff race and how the Kings are playing, how much fun this ride has been. Talk a lot about the G-Man, Gary Gerould, who Jason has worked closely with for most of G-Man's legendary career here in Sacramento. And Jason and I talk a lot at the end about what it's going to be like to experience playoff basketball here in Sacramento again, how we expect the crowd to react, what the atmosphere is going to be like in the Golden One Center, like thinking about when we want the Sacramento Kings to clinch. It's a really, really fun conversation that we want your response on. Think about what you think the atmosphere is going to be like. Have you daydreamed about what a playoff game day for the Sacramento Kings here is going to be like? Let me know at any time on Twitter at MattGeorgeSac. You can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, and leave your comments in the YouTube comment section down below. But for now, please enjoy my conversation with Jason Ross. Pleasure to be joined by Sacramento Kings radio broadcaster, the man who has worked with Mr. 3000 himself, Gary Gerould, for not the entire time the G-Man's been here in Sacramento, but for nearly the entire time. Jason Ross, the former host here of the Locked On Kings podcast. J. Ross, can you believe it's almost been 6 years? It'll be 6 years in March since you passed me the torch here of this podcast. And this season might have more wins than all those other seasons combined, but it's a fun run that we're both enjoying. Jay, welcome back into Locked On Kings, my friend. How are you?
I'm great, Matt. Thank you. No, I would not have guessed 6 years. Are you double checking that? I know we lost 2 years with COVID, but like that doesn't seem right.
100% accurate according to the records of Locked On, and they are smarter than I. So we will go off of that. But over these last 6 years, of course, we've sat through a lot of losing basketball. We've sat through a repetitive cycle where there's hope and there's optimism and they're moving in the right direction, and then things kind of fall apart a little bit. And then you have last season where it was just bad, basically start to finish, until the trade deadline and the Domantas Sabonis trade. But Jason, for someone who has covered the team as long as you have, who has worked with G and worked in the radio broadcast team, but also worked on hosting a radio show and everything, sometimes like we just forget what we do. And we forget what we're covering and that we're talking about a game. So how much fun has this been for you? And how much fun has this been for everybody that you've interacted with, Deuce and Henry and G, just to sit and watch winning basketball again, and a team that is not just winning, but a team that is sitting in the third seed here with 23 or 22 games to go?
Yeah, I'm glad I witnessed it before, but it was a long time ago. But now the first time back at it, Matt, it's so much fun. You've been around long enough now too to know, like, it's to see, you've been at the arena, all these games, it's different. The culture of the team, the post-game pictures, the fog machine. I can't wait for all of those things. And it feels like, we're supposed to be unbiased and just reporting on the scores, but I mean, we're fans of the team too. It's more fun for us when they win. And, probably for you, hey, Matt, your sportscasts sound better and look better. Well, you're doing the same thing, but people are enjoying watching the results of the Kings. And so You hear more of that. And the other part of it, Matt, honestly, I think they're just a lot of fun to watch. And that could be in a loss. Like that Clipper game could have gone the other way. The Mavs game a couple weeks ago could have gone the other way. I enjoy watching high level basketball, and the Kings have been doing that a lot. So for me, it's been great because they're legitimately a good team, and I'm enjoying every night.
It's impossible not to compare what's going on to the late 90s and early 2000s, really the only glory period that the Sacramento Kings have had. And in talking to people and looking back and reading our old articles and watching highlights, you can see parallels to the excitement building in Sacramento, see parallels to the quick turnaround and like a big trade that caused kind of this turnaround. What parallels do you recognize or see, or how familiar does this feel to when the glory days started in the 90s and 2000s?
I think it's exactly the same. I mean, maybe, players are obviously different, coaches are different, but it's the unity of the front office. It's a brand new coach coming in that just fits the right things, superb talent on the floor. I just think all the way through, it doesn't feel like they've really missed a step in the process. I'm a big fan of, Mike Brown gets a lot of credit. I think the entirety of the coaching staff is terrific. The depth of the roster. The main 8 to 9 get the credit, but you need all 15, all 17. Just all the way through. Monty McNair, Wes Wilcox, Vivek in his role. Just everybody's part of it. And I go back to, we kind of, you and I know, and all of us have probably made fun of some of the media people of the past nationally that never gave the Kings any attention. But Matt, I felt like the common phrasing from national media in the offseason was, everything the Kings are doing makes sense. And the making sense part has made sense. And then the results, I think they've taken advantage of a Western Conference that maybe is really competitive, but no one's running out super far. I think the Kings, with their record of the All-Star break, if it was the same last year, they would have been in 7th. Well, this year they're 3rd. Take advantage of that. Take advantage of injuries. Take advantage of teams resting players. So the Kings have had a goal. They've stuck with it, and they're really getting close to achieving that goal of making the postseason.
The last time we heard from Monty McNair was after the trade deadline, and there were 2 parts of that press conference that stood out to me, and I want to ask you about both. The first one, you were kind of alluding to how good the coaching staff has been, and we already heard in the Atlanta Hawks coaching search. Now, they ended up with Quinn Snyder, but they were interested in Jordy Fernandez, and Mike Brown has talked a lot about how Jordy's going to get a job eventually, or should be getting that kind of attention. Monty McNair brought up that Wes Wilcox should be running his own team, and they say it's kind of a feather in your organization's cap if other teams are trying to take what you have and grab a part of your coaching staff or a part of your front office and make it their main guy. What do you think about just how the cohesiveness? Mike Brown at the very, very beginning of his tenure, in his introductory press conference, spent so much time talking about this organization having a soul and everybody needing to come together. Are you surprised by how quickly it seems that everybody has gotten on the same page?
Yeah, I am, because I thought, I always said this, I'm more of an optimistic, even though you literally have the jersey of the optimistic Kings fan. In the past couple of years when the Kings didn't make it, I would look at certain teams and go, wait, why is Memphis better than Sacramento? Honestly, why? Why did the Grizzlies find this season to win 50 games? Or why did Team X go for 48? That could have been the Kings, and people would look at you crazy. I'm like, well, what is the difference? What are the subtleties that are happening here? And from the get-go, a lot of things have gone right, but they've created a lot of this. But look, the goal was, can they be in the play-in, or maybe a 6 seed? But I think it was really more about the play-in. And right now, I think until they officially get in, I think those goals have moved. When you've played this well this long, strive for 2. I don't know if they can get to 1, but strive for 2. Keep 3. Home court advantage as far as you can have it. Those are all things this team should be chasing. But it has surprised me how fast they've done it.
The other question or quote from Monty, he was asked about at what moment did he think he had something special? And he talked about the Utah Jazz win down to the wire in the Golden One Center and how just loud it was in that building. I know a lot of people are going to point to Friday night's game against the Clippers. Is there a game or a moment or just a time period that you recollect or can think back to? And maybe there's a lot of them, because I've been putting together a list of why this team is different over the course of the season and what they've done differently to years past. But is there anything that comes to mind? It's like, this is when I thought, okay, maybe this isn't just a fluke and a hot start. This is legitimately who this team is.
Yeah, I don't know if it's one moment as opposed to the compilation of a couple of different games. One of them that jumps out is honestly early in the year, the Brooklyn Nets national TV game. I know they weren't the same team, but okay, they put up 153, 154, whatever it was, and hit a bunch of threes and just looked, okay, I know that was a special night, but hey, is this offense becoming something really special? Now we know it is. It's the number 1 offense in the NBA. And then I've been pleased too with splitting with Memphis 2-2, a win on the second night of a back-to-back against Denver, the Dallas win when they had Luka and Kyrie, and certainly Friday night. These are games against teams that I think are good enough to win the West and still may win the West overall. But the Kings are now showing me more than, hey, they might just get there, as opposed to, they might get there and do some damage. So I think because their offense is so elite, everybody says their defense isn't, which I think factually is true, but I think they pick their spots. And then my counter also is I don't know who's good defensively and how many teams really, and maybe it'll ramp up in the postseason, but I haven't seen a Kings team like the Clippers are playing top 10 defense when the Kings played them. They put up 176 in double overtime. It was high scoring before that. So I don't know. I don't know who's a great defensive team. I know the Kings are a great offensive team, and they got to capitalize on that.
Yeah, and building off of the historically great offense, literally the greatest offensive rating in history as of right now, for an NBA team during the regular season. How well do you think that translates what the Sacramento Kings do offensively? How well do you think that translates to a 7-game series? Because teams are, of course, going to make adjustments, and ultimately the Kings are going to go into any playoff series for the most part lacking the experience compared to their opponent. But at the same time, too, I don't know that much experience that could stop a team that still wins after giving up 175 points, or a team that could drop 130 on you without really having a amazing night. Like we've seen the Kings score 130 and have a bad quarter or two.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, I don't know exactly how the playoffs will go for them if they get there. I think the one thing that is encouraging on the Kings side of things is I think the defensive metrics, they're like 27th in the league in the first half, something like 20th in the third, like 9th in the fourth. So you're getting better as a defense. Now, offensively, De'Aaron Fox, most clutch points in the league. I think the Kings finish games strong. They've been in a lot of games close at the end. I think those all matter. But I think what's been interesting in the Kings, I think more than any team, Matt, have had those either back-to-back or 2 games in 3 nights with the same team, and they've won the second game every time. I know it's not exactly a playoff series, but it's similar. And the Kings, I think, have done a good job of making adjustments between games, and certainly from second half or first half to second half. So again, back to the coaching staff. I think they've got a good staff. A lot of it's going to come down to matchups, but I think the Kings match up pretty well with a lot of teams.
De'Aaron Fox is on just a ridiculous run right now. 7 straight 30 or more point games. He scored 30 or more in 9 of the last 10. It's easy to get caught up in the, is he a superstar? Is he not kind of conversation, especially now that he has an all-star game and the recognition of an all-star appearance on his resume. But when you just sit back and appreciate what De'Aaron is doing and compare it to what superstars do for their respective teams, it's hard to deny De'Aaron in the way he's playing right now.
That's what I've been saying about him lately. Like whatever we think of, whatever, pick your superstar, whether it's Dame getting 71, Booker, Durant, Donovan Mitchell. I mean, they're all over the league. And if you don't watch them all the time, you'll just look at the stats and go, man, that guy's a stud, great player. Wish we had a player like them. They have one. The Kings fans, you have one. It's De'Aaron Fox. He's doing all those things that other players do. And I've said this for a while about De'Aaron. I think when you get elevated to another level is when you do it in the postseason. And I have no doubt that he's going to have an awesome postseason. So people, wow, that De'Aaron Fox is pretty good. It's the stuff people said in the bubble about Jamal Murray. He went for what? He did 50? You get attention on the biggest stage. I'm convinced that he will thrive in the postseason. Now, he might have a game where someone does a good job defensively against him, but De'Aaron's also going to have a 35-9 with 1 turnover game. I mean, he's just that good.
This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, you have to give Built Bars a try. We just got through the holidays. My goal is to eat a little bit healthier this year, but mainly I'm looking at Built Bars for the amazing protein that they have to add that to my diet and help me maybe gain a little bit of weight, gain a little bit of muscle mass. Well, Built Bars not only help accomplish that, they can help you lose weight, help you just ultimately eat right and feel better without having to sacrifice that sweet tooth. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're all covered in 100% real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond. My favorite is mint brownie. I don't know how Built does it, but they managed to put together essentially candy bars. They taste like candy bars. They look like candy bars, but they only have 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein in each bar. Plus, they have their Built granola bars. They have their marshmallow puffs, which are protein-infused marshmallows. They're so delicious. Give them a try right now, and you no longer have to just order them on Built.com and wait for your box to arrive. You can go to Walmart or Sam's Club, go to the pharmacy section, order a box there. Give them a try. I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed. And of course, you can order anything you want at Built.com. A conversation a lot around the Sacramento Kings, especially around the trade deadline, was a conversation about depth. And I talked about this a lot on yesterday's Locked On Kings podcast, because there's a couple ways of looking at depth. There's looking at rotations and minute distribution and seeing clear holes, like for the Kings of the backup center spot. Mm-hmm. But then there's looking at depth as different guys that can step up and contribute on different nights. And if you go through this Kings roster and the amount of players that have had 30-point games, the amount of players that just exploded randomly in Kings wins. Terrence Davis has had 2 really big games, including the Brooklyn Nets game. Trey Lyles has been one of the most surprising and fun, consistent players off the Kings bench. Malik Monk just went for 45. Kevin Huerter was shooting over 50% from 3-point range at the start of the season. Of course, there's Fox. Of course, there's Sabonis. Keegan Murray has been playing super, super well. The month of January that Harrison Barnes had, I could just keep going down the list. Like, to me, that is depth, that this Kings team is loaded with a roster of players that on any given night can step up and be the guy to lead the Kings to a win. And what a great problem, I guess, for Mike Brown to have to figure out how to get those in there.
Yeah, they've shown it. They've shown that. I mean, the staples generally are Sabonis and Fox, are about as consistent as you get. That's what makes them all-stars. But the fact that Keegan Murray might show up for 20, or Barnes, or Malik Monk 30 or 40, which is crazy, but they consistently get that 3rd, 4th, 5th guy to contribute, to add up to this spectacular offense. And what's amazing too, we watch every Kings game, so we see the flaws. Yeah, they probably could use another playmaker. Yeah, they probably could use another rim backup center or rim protector type player, maybe another perimeter defender. But all that being said, I mean, they're 10 games above 500, number 1 offense, playing adequate enough defense. I would think that needs to get better. I think that's fair to say. But I mean, every team's got some issues and some flaws. And so as much as we know what the Kings are, opposing teams do as well. But I'm sure everybody's tried to attack that at this point, and they've made it this far, and they haven't figured it all out. But, with flaws, they still have a really good thing going.
And going back to Friday night's win in Los Angeles, the surface layer is already incredible enough with the second highest game in history. But peeling back that layer and looking at just like the resiliency of the Sacramento Kings is what I really paid attention to. A team that's in this playoff race, a team, even though they were higher in the standings than the Clippers going into that game, it still felt like they were the underdogs in a way, with more to prove than the Clippers did. They faced a MVP caliber Kawhi Leonard and overcame it. A reinforced, rested Los Angeles Clippers roster on the road and overcame it. And the way they overcame it, I said taking haymaker after haymaker after haymaker. There's so many points in that game where the Kings could have folded, or it could have gotten out of hand, and you would understand, like, good fight, proud of you, but the Clippers were just better tonight. And Sacramento continued to respond. And typically it was defensively where they would respond. Like, what does that in your mind say about this Kings team? And did you notice kind of those, almost like if you're building a 30 for 30 documentary about that game, there are clear plot points, like a Creed or a Rambo movie, just building plot points of a comeback story. I meant Rocky Balboa, not Rambo. Sorry, Sylvester Stallone. But just that title weight fight of getting knocked down time and time again and continue to come back and persevere and ultimately win. Like, that's an easy game to make a documentary about.
Yeah, your phrasing is exactly what I thought, though, when they were down, because there was no separation in the game until about the 4-minute mark of the regulation when they were down 14. I thought, oh man, this has been as good of a basketball game from start to finish as we've had this year. That's too bad. I mean, they're going to lose by about 9, and man, I felt like they had some chances here. And then what turned it? Defense. Fox got a layup. That was fine. Picked George in the backcourt. Keegan steps in the passing lane. They get a backcourt offensive foul on Norman Powell and went, oh my gosh, if they score here, it's a 2-possession game. They scored, and then it was on. And their ability, and it got down 6 in the first overtime, got down 6 in the second overtime. So their ability to come back, and a lot of it in a game that is the second highest scoring game in history, came on their defense. And so that's what I was talking about earlier. Like, they're opportunistic. They play it kind of when they need to, but I think they know their best asset still is their offense, but they used both at different times in that game. And again, that win, the win against Dallas with Kyrie and Luka, and like I said earlier, splitting with Memphis, splitting so far with Denver. I mean, those are the league's best right now. And I think back to the season, there's been some nights where you kind of go, what happened tonight? Like Toronto completely choked them out offensively. That was the one game I went, okay, this doesn't look like the Kings.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a blueprint? Did someone find it? I think it was a one night. At this point, I mean, the Kings for a couple games are scoring about 112. Now they're living in that 130, 140, 170 range again. So, there's not many teams that have slowed them down this year.
I know if I were to ask this question to your co-host or bring this up to your co-host, Carmichael Dave, he might get superstitious and not want to commit to it. But I feel pretty confident in saying that this team is a playoff team. Like I know mathematically there's still more than enough opportunity for them to fall into the play-in picture. I would be shocked at this point. And there's nothing about this team that suggests that's going to happen. I think that's more of like the Kings' history of the last 16 years, scaring people more than what's actually happening in front of them. But when it comes to actually clinching the playoffs, this has been a fun conversation to have, like what opponent or on the road or at home. Like, have you thought about that at all, of how much fun it would be to clinch at home or against this team or at this point? Like, have you or G-Man or Deuce or anybody talked about that?
No, not really. I mean, I guess I think it is going to happen, and I haven't really thought about the opponent. I mean, I have to look at the end because there's so many different mathematics and different things that have to happen, and some of it's starting to sort itself out a little bit. But I mean, I guess if there's a preference, I'd always say take it at home. I mean, that's just for the home crowd to hear the light the beam chant. Maybe they'll morph it into we're going to the playoffs. I have no idea how they'll change that, but I think about like past seasons where maybe the Kings were flirting with this position and like, hey, they're 4 out with 12 to go. If something. And now that they're in such a good position and to literally be looking at the standings going, who do I want to see the Kings playing in the first? I mean, it's been a position we've been in before, but it's been a long, long time. And like I said, I when I first started working, the Kings were not a playoff team. Then saw 1 year of them making the playoffs, and there was another couple of years of bad basketball, and then the great 8-year run. And in that about year 4 or 5, I literally remember getting to like training camp, like, well, we just got to get through these 82 because they'll probably be a 2 seed or a 3 seed. Maybe they'll want, like, it was almost like the regular season became a bore. And I don't want to be in that position again because we know what it's been like. And I'm really enjoying what we're watching right now.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. The only thing that I question is, we've seen teams in multiple sports, not just in the NBA, that go on have these magical seasons where it's just they are the story, and they have these phenomenal seasons, put together these phenomenal runs, and then you question the very next year, are they going to be able to do it again? And some of them aren't able to. Now the run isn't over. We don't know how deep the Sacramento Kings are going to go, but when you look at this team, and of course we expect Monty McNair to make adjustments and changes during the offseason and additions, and there's questions about certain players and their futures, guys like Harrison Barnes, for example, but the team as we understand it and the foundation as we understand it and how they've played this season, do you think this is a team that's similar to the Weber years in the early 2000s, that you can copy and paste them into the Western Conference playoff picture for, assuming they stay together, for years to come? Do you think it's that repeatable, what they're doing?
I think there are trends to that. Now, I think it's going too far to predict that for certainty for a couple of reasons. First one would be the cautionary tales. Like I told you earlier, the Kings currently are the 3 seed, but just last year, that would have been 7th at the All-Star game. That's a game changer. So Phoenix was 50-10 at the break last year. I mean, Phoenix is nowhere near that. I think you also have to look at the trades that were made, which I think a lot of people overreacted to for this season. But for next season, I wouldn't. I do think the Lakers will be a big problem next year, but that's next year. Now, they still could figure it out and get into that top 10. And if they do all of that and then get through the play-in and into the postseason, there'll be a problem. But that's a lot of steps for them. What Dallas did now, if they keep Luka and Kyrie for a full year, other teams that have been unhealthy. Also, what changes? Do some more stars from the East come West? So there's a lot of different moving parts, but even like this last year, I think maybe we did a pod after the season. It's like, well, which team could the Kings even replace from the 10? And there was like, these guys are automatics. Well, things change. We just don't know. Some teams we thought were automatic maybe aren't. So, but they've built the basis. They've done a lot of important things. I think they've given the team confidence. That's what I like. I think the Kings believe they're good, which is important. But if it's going to parallel what they did in the early 2000s, one, they have to continue to do this and get there. And then honestly, Monty already made a really bold move in trading Tyrese Halliburton for Domantas Sabonis, but maybe it takes something that at the time, like the Domantas trade, wasn't popular because everybody loved Halliburton. But do you move? I don't know, Keegan, not Harrison, but something else like a Malik Monk, Fox. I don't know, something crazy that you go, no, they actually will get better out of this, which is what they did for Jay Will and Bibby, though it wasn't popular at the time. So that may not be this offseason. That could be another offseason away or two, but he's got to keep thinking about how do you make the team better.
Another quick pause here as I tell you about another great sponsor of the Locked On Kings podcast, LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's like having a professional sports scouting department at your fingertips that helps highlight the best players for your job or best candidates for your job. You add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile. You spread the word that you are hiring. And with their simple tools like screening questions, it makes it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We've all at one point or another looked around inside the Golden One Center. I do it a lot when Scott Freshour is doing his fourth quarter pump up and how loud it gets in that building. And the Kings against the Portland Trailblazers last week had 18,000 people. Yeah, of course. Yep. The pregame pump up music that Jason and I love so much. Like 18,000 people going nuts in that building. It's very easy to daydream what that atmosphere is going to be like and compare it to maybe it's a very similar atmosphere to Kings versus Sonics when Sacramento got those playoffs for the first time and that kind of reaction. Have you allowed yourself to daydream yet about this season, what Doko and the Golden One Center and the build up to that playoff game, whether it's game 1 or game 3, but having a playoff game in the Golden One Center for sure. Have you allowed yourself to daydream about what that's going to be like?
I have the inside and the outside, because I remember when the building was being built and kind of the first times down there and wait, what's all this going to be? And they're like, well, a hotel and like a courtyard, an area. I mean, I look at what the Bucks have done, what Dallas has, viewing parties, like other things. I mean, I can imagine 18,000 in, but I don't know how many are going to be outside just going, I'm going to the game. Oh, you have tickets? No, I just want to be down at Golden One Center watching the big screens. Are you and I going to hear a second cheer outside if it's delayed? Like, I don't know. I could picture the doors being open and hearing that as well. So yes, I have. Intros are just, I always get goosebumps, even if the Kings are 10-40 and it's a new night and they're playing Detroit and Mokes cracks that mic. And I'm like, it's just a new night. You don't know what you're going to see. So I know I will not take any of this for granted. I can't wait for that to happen.
Well, we all in Sacramento deserve to witness that and to be a part of that, but no one deserves it more than G, right? Yeah. Mr. 3000, who has been here the entire time and who has called and seen more losing basketball than anybody should in their professional NBA career. But for G to have this run, and I know it was game 2,999 and not 3,000 that he got that Clippers game, but for him to call that and to hear his final call and then to have all the recognition that he's getting, and he's so humble. He says he doesn't know if he deserves it and whatever, but he absolutely does deserve it. His voice, I mean, he's been calling games my entire life. So his voice is synonymous with Kings basketball for me. I know it's the same way with you, and you have had the really unique and really privileged to work with him and next to him and see him at his craft on a daily basis. So you've already spoken about it a bunch. You are part of that amazing tribute video that the Sacramento Kings put together for him. But to reflect on his career, you working with him, just the daily, the ins and outs of who he is as a broadcaster and as a person. How much are you enjoying not just this run that the Kings have been on, but what this run has been for him?
Yeah, it's all of it's been overwhelming. I know he said that, but just I love it because we know you've been in radio and you've been in television for whatever not whatever reason. Television is it's easier to consume.
Yep.
Medium, right? People can see the images, want to watch it. I get it, but there's just a different art form to radio, and Gary's the show. I mean, it's his description of what the games are going, good, bad, ugly, and unfortunately, there's been more ugly and bad than good for him lately. But for him to get this recognition, one, it's well-deserved. It's an accomplishment not many have ever done in the NBA. But Matt, you know him. I mean, it's just, he's a legendary person. I mean, really, as a person, as a human being, we've had many meals with him in the media room. He could speak up the whole time. He could just be a listener. He might say the funniest joke of the night, might say the most poignant thing. I mean, I don't know. He's just, he was talking today about, I was catching up on social media for the last 5 hours on Twitter and Instagram and on Facebook. And I'm thinking, he's 82, he's tweeting, he's on Facebook, he's on Instagram, and whatever the newer thing that comes out, he's going to get a part of that. I mean, he hasn't been like, I don't understand like, he's hip, he's cool, he's current, but he's legendary. There's nostalgia. Like, he hits all the realms, and that's hard to do. And he's so universally liked and loved, but he deserves all of that. I mean, he's such a great human being. And then to watch him work. I mean, I was saying this to Henry on the pregame the other day. I said, when you've done something so long, hey, I'll cut this corner. Maybe I won't prepare as much tonight. That's not in his fabric. I mean, he's going to have almost every night he'll say something, and you and I watch the league all the time. Like, where did that stat come from? Where did that note come from? I never heard that. So he is so prepared, so detail oriented. His descriptions of the game are just phenomenal. And like I said, he's just an awesome person to work with. And then the fact that, so last night when it was game 3000, all we knew on our end, we were kind of told, hey, keep it quick on the post game because they're doing something special for Gary. I'm like, oh, great. So he signs off quickly. And, Henry and I are thinking, if they've got to do the chain, like if there's some way they could do the chain. And then we didn't know, we're all waiting for social media. And when then Mike Brown was asked, did Keegan Murray get the chain? And there was a little pause, like, no, he didn't. He goes, because communication is big. I remember I was in the studio going, he's doing it. He's going to give it to the G-Man. And he sold it perfectly. And then to see the video, to see his reaction, it made all of the nights. I was just so happy for him, and it's so well-deserved.
Yeah, for G to get that moment too. I was going to ask you about it next, but I'm glad you just talked about it naturally. I mean, to see him not only get that recognition, but for how a team of guys who are, for the most part, average age, mid to high 20s, how they can appreciate what an 80-year-old legend does and what he brings to the table and what he still brings to the game. And in addition to that, to invite him into that celebration, give him the gifts that they gave him, allow him to wear the chain, which as far as I know, he's the first and maybe only ever to be a non-player to wear the chain. And then for him to lead the cheer at the end, or the huddle at the end. It's just really, it gives him the recognition as part of the team that he actually is. And I know some people kind of scoff or roll their eyes at, why does a broadcaster get a ring? Why does this team employee get a ring? Yeah. G-Man is just as much a part of the team, travels with the team, has been through the grind with the team, not just this season, but all over every single season. So for him to get the recognition as part of the team, I think was the cherry on top of all of the recognition that he deserves. And in my opinion, games, hopefully 3023 inside the Golden One Center for a Kings playoff game. Like that might be his best ever. And I'm so excited to hear him call playoff basketball again, because he'll sound like he's back in his 40s. He'll sound like he's young again.
Yeah, that's why I think of going back to, the parallels of the early 2000s, like this team gets it. Mike Brown talked about the soul. They get it. There's a character to this team, but the whole community is acknowledging G-Man for 38 years and 3,000 games. And the Kings just didn't go, hey, nice job, Gary. Here's a watch. Good work. It was like, no, you're one of us. Come on in here, get the fog machine, get the chain, get the lights, and let's celebrate G-Man. And it's like, they're a traveling party. They're a family, and it's awesome. I mean, he deserved it. I know he was overwhelmed. He said he was, but he deserved all that. I'm glad he soaked it in and didn't back away from it and got all the love he deserved.
Finally, J. Ross, real quick, if the Kings hold this spot and go into the playoffs as a third seed, or maybe even a second seed, they're closer to second than they are to fourth. If they secure this and go into playoffs with home court advantage, is Mike Brown a lock for Coach of the Year and Monty McNair a lock for Executive of the Year?
I feel like Monty has the better shot unless I'm missing something. I would say Mike Brown, yes, but I don't know. There's a lot of candidates there.
Boston. Yeah, yep.
I mean, I'm a little torn on that one. You go from reclamation project to Boston was really stacked and supposed to be good. Now that's a hard situation for Joe Mazzulla. I mean, it's impressive, but I feel really good about Monty in that role. And I do think Mike should win it, but God, I just love the fact of them being a 3 seed or a 2 seed. Doesn't that sound good?
Sounds brilliant.
Do you have a preference, by the way, if they get in, on who you'd like to see them play?
Absolutely not. Truth be told, no, because I tweeted this out. Like, I think there are going to be a lot of teams that want the Kings because of their lack of experience. They're going to feel better about the Kings than maybe if they got the Warriors in the opening round or something like that. There's people saying like the Denver Nuggets could win the West and get the Lakers in the opening round. It's like, okay, the Denver Nuggets will probably beat the Lakers given the circumstances. But like, I think the Kings are going to have some rough lessons to learn. And it might be the situation to where what happened against Utah pretty early on, where Utah kicked their ass in game 1 and the Kings come back and win games 2 and 3. Like, that might happen again. But I think any team who says they want to play the Sacramento Kings in a 7-game series, I think they're in for a rude awakening, because even if the Kings are giving up a lot of points, they're going to be relentless attacking. And can you stop De'Aaron Fox in the fourth quarter when you need to? I don't know if anybody can. So I don't care who the opponent is. I just want that moment in the Golden One Center. I want the build up to the day, because I intentionally waited until the actual legit home opener versus the San Antonio Spurs to experience a game in the Golden One Center for the first time. I didn't go to the preseason games, but I went to the Golden One Center at like noon that day, and I just hung out all day long, walked around the building and walked around outside and watched kind of their rehearsals that they do before the game, and just allowed myself to be there and soak it all in and build up and get excited. I might be there at 9 a.m. on the day of playoffs if they'll actually let me in the building, because that's a day that not only we've all been waiting for, but as a Sacramento Kings fan, like, that's, as a child of the late 90s and early 2000s, like, that's something that I've wanted to experience again more than anything. So just for me, selfishly, it's like, I don't care who the opponent is. I don't care the final score of game 1. Give me the build up, give me the play-in or the playoff intros, and I'm a happy camper. Everything else is house money.
One of my memories of the 95-96 playoff series with Seattle was that it was really the loudest open to a game I've ever heard. And the standing ovation was, I know it's, now in lore and it's changed, but it sure felt like it was about 40 minutes before tip off. And honestly, Matt, I think people ran out of energy. Like, it was a great game. Mitch got hurt, and the Kings, it was 1-1 series. You're thinking, can they still win? And the fourth quarter was still loud, but I felt like they're spent. It's so emotionally charged up all day long before the game, in the game. And it's not like the fans let down the Kings by any means, but it was like, I felt like there was just this high peak and then subtle drop, and like, oh man, they're out of gas. But, I can imagine something like that happening for the first one, just because everybody's going to be so darn excited.
Yeah, Arco Thunder was a very, very real thing, to which my mom would ask my uncle to make me wear earplugs when I'd go to the games as a kid, and thank God he wouldn't let me. So I got to experience that. And I don't think, like, we got to hear on the TV side the pop of how loud it got when Kevin Huerter hit that essentially game-winning 3 against Utah. I don't think we've even come close to how loud the Golden One Center is going to be. Once we get to that point, and that's what excites me too, to feel that energy and feel that passion. Finally we've made it here, and we're releasing 16 years of tension. Like, I'm getting chills even just thinking about just how loud it is going to be in that building when we finally get playoffs in there.
And then you just get the attention. I can remember a story, I want to say, and I could have the years wrong, it might be like in golf, the 2002, 2003 US Open. And I'm going to say, like, Phil Mickelson chipped in a shot. Johnny Miller was the broadcaster, and the crowd went nuts. It might have been in his home course in San Diego. And he's like, what is this, a Sacramento Kings game? Yeah. And so you just get references and correlations to how great the crowd is here. And it's been that way. And Arco had the advantage of those wood floors, and people would stomp on those and make it so loud. But I'll say Golden One this year, by far the best year for crowds and energy and vibe. And the team has been the huge reason for that.
Well, we will get there sooner than later. Still a lot more of a race to go, but whether we're the optimistic fans or we're just believing what our eyes are seeing with this team, I think we're going to get there. J. Ross, it's going to be so fun to experience that with you, to hear G-Man call that game. I might have to have a radio earpiece in my ear during that game just to hear what G's doing. I appreciate you so much for always being willing to come on this platform, for covering the Kings and doing what you do for the Kings for as long as you have, in addition to G and all that great team. So you deserve this run as much as anybody too. I can't wait for April, man. Let's bring it on.
Me too. Let's go.
Always a treat to have Jason Ross here on the Locked On Kings podcast. Hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And boy, very soon, like it's not just a talking point anymore. Very soon, we're going to actually get to experience that playoff atmosphere in and around the Golden One Center, in and around downtown Sacramento. I think the entire city is going to shut down, truth be told. I'm already talking to a lot of fans who have taken a break from the Kings or haven't really paid attention since the glory days. And they're starting to ask me questions again and starting to tune in and go, man, I got to get it out to a game. I welcome everybody. Welcome back. If you're an old Kings fan who kind of put it on pause for a while, welcome back. I'm happy to have you. So many of you have reached out to me recently saying that you've recently discovered the podcast or this is your first season listening to the podcast. I appreciate you so much. What a fun ride it's been, and I can't wait for it to continue into the postseason. Check out all the great work that Jason Ross does over at Sacktown Sports 1140. Of course, listen to him and the G-Man on every single Kings radio broadcast, including the playoffs upcoming. Looking forward to hearing them doing what they do on that massive stage as well. Tomorrow, Kings, Thunder again. Hopefully the Kings can build off of their win last night and make it 4 straight since the All-Star break. Boy, would that be great to see with how this playoff race is going. So we'll see how that goes. I hope you join me for the next episode. And on Wednesday's Locked On Kings podcast, I'm expected to be joined by Damian Barling from ESPN 1320's D-Lo and KC radio show. Damian's a longtime friend of the show, friend of mine, and I know he'll have some things to say about how well this team is playing right now. So I'm looking forward to having him join me for that. So I hope you'll tune in for that as well. It's been a great week already, and it's only Monday, believe it or not. I'm excited for what this week is going to bring. Thank you for your support as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.